another thing in attics that we're seeing a lot of times is we're seeing the vent fans from a house, from your bathrooms, your laundry room, your whole house ventilation fan system. What we're seeing a lot of times aren't the appropriate type of, first off, vent fan lines, which are carrying the air to the exterior of the house. The correct way now that you want to see a vent fan exhaust pipe, it theoretically needs to be an insulated pipe, and they sell these, right? It's just like an R6, I believe, ventilation. It's just a black type of tubing, and basically it goes from the fan and it goes up into the exhaust port in the attic. It's important for a homeowner to understand that when they do look in their attic, because now you'll want to know, how much insulation do I have? Is it enough? And while you're up there also, which I encourage people typically at least once a year, especially during a good heavy rainstorm, is to stick their head up in the attic. Go up there, be very careful when you're walking around up there, but take a good flashlight. Make sure that all your vent fan lines for your bathrooms, your laundry room, your whole house vent, make sure those are still nice and neat and tied up and they're venting out of the roof. Just gravity. Things just happen, right? We sometimes don't even have a reason or an understanding of why they happen. They just fell down. If they're falling down or have fallen down, basically all they're doing is venting moist air into your attic of the house. So that's something I think you should take very important consideration for at least once a year, putting your head in your attic. Also putting your head in the crawl space, right? Putting on your gloves, your safety gear, get in your crawl space, take a look around, make sure the insulation's up, all those types of things that we talked about for crawl spaces and especially attics, but be very careful in an attic when you're walking around in there. The other thing that I would like to touch on just real quickly is also insulation. We've mentioned the thickness and the depth of insulation. We've talked about the craft paper faced insulation. But one thing that we don't, as typical homeowners or consumers, don't understand, and the only time that it would really come into play with you is if you were doing let's say a remodel on your house and you're having a wall insulated. It's very important. We actually grade how insulation is put into a wall cavity, for example, and the grades are 1, 2, and 3, A, B, or C, right? So a grade 1 insulation basically fills the entire cavity. In and around your outlets and your switches and your wall plates and things like that, the insulation is really nice and neat and tucked up against there. Again, we have no compression of the insulation into the wall cavities. We just don't go shoving in there at the top up there. There's a big gap up there. Or when you look down the face, it's got all these dipty-doodles in it and those types of things. That's not a good insulation job. You want a nice clean face that covers the entire capsulization of the interior of the wall cavity itself that you're insulating, or the floor, right? So we want to make sure we have a grade 1. A grade 2, it kind of got some missing parts. It's kind of maybe got some pockets in it and those types of things, or it's not cut out really nice and neat and tight around your wall outlets. Again, the wall outlets, the switches and the plates, those types of things are great areas for air to come into your house from the exterior. So it's very important that those are also insulated very well around those cutouts and those types of openings there. So be mindful that when you're having insulation put in, it's not just a matter of just shoving it in the wall cavity. It needs to look nice and neat, flat, planed all the way across. Therefore, you know you got a good insulation in your walls or even in your subfloors, that type of stuff. It's the same principle in the attic. You want a good, clean, concentric coverage. The other thing that we see a lot of times in attics are people are storing items in their attic. I do not recommend that. Sometimes it's out of necessity. I understand that. But when you start putting plywood and things of that nature on top of your insulation in those areas of your attic, what you have theoretically done is you've gotten rid of all the insulation where that plywood is sitting or your stored items are sitting. And now because of your interior air, your relative humidity, as that rises up, it can't pass through, or if it tries to pass through that insulation, it's going to create mold or condensation. We've seen many times going in a house, I can tell you exactly where things are stored in the attic because I look at the ceiling and there's an outline of mold or bacteria on the top of the ceiling, and I know that somebody stored something in there without even looking in the attic. So I don't encourage people to actually store things in their attic. It's going to disrupt the insulation, the wiring, the lighting, things of that nature. So you want to be very, very careful about that as well.